Bubu dresses are incredibly versatile and you can rock it for casual or major occasions. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you all how I made this gorgeous Ankara print and organza Bubu dress. This dress is very easy to make and I'm going to be sharing everything you need to know about recreating this type of style for yourself or for your clients in very simple steps. If you'd be interested in knowing all about this process, please make sure you watch this video to the end. Be sure to like the video if you enjoy watching, subscribe if you're yet to, share with your friends and family that would love content like this. Alright guys, let's get straight into today's video. Let's go. To make this dress, you need the following dimensions that I have right here on your screen. Feel free to pause and take a screenshot of this portion or write it down if that's what you'd like. I'm going to leave it on the screen for 5 more seconds. Please do the needful before we get straight into today's tutorial. Alright friends, so these are the items required. You need your ruler, you need your fabric of choice. For me, I'm working with Ankara. You also need your tailoring chalk. You need a piece of organza fabric. All you need is about 1.5 yards. You also need your tape rule for taking measurements. This fabric right here that I have on my screen is organza. Feel free to switch out the organza for any other fabric you like. What I have here is my fabric on fold. For this dress, the dress length is 57 inches. The width of the dress, which is going to be my shoulder, is about 45 inches on fold. Remember that the full length of Ankara fabric is usually by 45. So I folded my shoulder according to the length of my Ankara, and the length of my dress was folded according to the width of my Ankara. I hope it all makes sense to you guys. And that is my own preferred measurement. What I'm going to be marking here are my vertical measurements. My shoulder to my bust point is 11 inches and I'm going to mark 11 right there. And I'm going to also mark that same 11 inch on another portion just to make sure that when I start to square out my measurements, I have a straight line. My shoulder to my waist or my half length is about 17 inches and that is what I'm marking right there on the screen. Please feel free to input your own measurements at these points that I'm showing right here on the screen, okay? We are not the same body size, so our measurements might not necessarily be the same. My shoulder to my hip point is about 26 inches, so I'm going to mark 26 right there on the screen. The next thing I'm going to do now is start to square out these measurements using my ruler or pattern master. While editing and looking at the footage, I realized that my chalk wasn't showing properly on the fabric. Apologies for this, but because I knew that I was going to wear this dress right after sewing, I didn't want to make any marks that would leave something that would not come off after sewing. Okay, so apologies for this. I hope you guys still enjoyed the tutorial and follow the instructions shared. So as I was saying, all I'm doing is connecting those points that I marked, okay, those vertical measurements. I'm using my ruler to join them together in order to now start to impute my horizontal measurements. So the next thing I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to draw my shoulder slant, and that is just coming down by 1 inch from the shoulder line. The shoulder line is the very top of the fabric, okay? And then for my front piece, even though I'm not imputing a zip on the front, I'm also still going to add zip allowance of 2 inches on the front, and we are going to see why that is being done. All I'm doing here is I'm using my ruler to connect that 2 inches zip allowance. The reason why I'm doing this is because for this bubu, I don't want it to be something that I have to wear from the top. I want to be able to wear it from the bottom, okay? And that means I'm going to put a zip, okay? And because I'm putting zip at the back, I have to account for that zip allowance at the back on the front. So now that I'm done, drawing my zip allowance on the front, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw my neckline. And the dimension for my neckline is 5 inches by 7 inches. Feel free to tweak this measurement. Because I don't want too much cleavage to show on this particular dress, I decided to keep it at 7 inches or 7.5. I don't quite remember now, but the neck width is 5 inches. And all I'm doing here is I'm using my ruler to connect those dimensions together. So this dress is going to be a V-neck. And yeah, guys, we'll see how I'm going to be achieving that V-neck as we go along. What I'm now doing is I'm connecting my neck width to that shoulder slant, okay? Remember that we came down by 1 inch earlier on, so I'm connecting that 1 inch dimension to my neck width. The next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to now impute my armhole measurement. For the armhole of this dress, I'm going to go up from my bust point by 2 inches. And you remember that my shoulder to my bust was 11. So now going up by 2 inches means my armhole is going to be 9 inches. So I just marked that 9 inch right there on the fabric. And I'm using my ruler as usual to connect the two lines that I marked together. To make this butterfly bubu, please take note that we are not imputing any form of sewing allowance because we want the dress to fit perfectly, and we're going to understand why as we go along. So please make sure that when imputing your horizontal measurements, you're putting your exact measurements. The worst case scenario is to add ease.
Because remember, it's a butterfly bubu we are doing. So for this kind of bubu, you are sewing on the actual measurements. You are not adding any form of seam allowance. The highest you can do is to add allowance for ease at the side. So that's a ½ inch that I put right there. And I'm going to come to my waistline here. My round waist is what's my round waist? My round waist is 34 inches. So 34 divided by 4. Let me do the maths here. So 34 divided by 4 is 8.5, and I'm going to give myself ½ inch ease. So that's 9 inches. I'm going to mark that 9 inch right here. And my round hip, let me move up again. This is where my hip line is. I hope you guys can see it. Let me move my light closer for you to see. But yeah, this is where my hip line is. And my round hip is 42. And 42 divided by 4 is 10.5. So I'll mark 10.5, then add ½ inch ease. So that's about 11 inches. So I'll mark that same 11 inch right here. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to connect each of these lines.
After connecting the lines, I also went ahead to cut out that my neckline measurement that I measured earlier on in the tutorial, and that's what gave me this V-neck situation here.
Alright guys, so I didn't realize that my camera battery had died, but I'm back now. So this is the back piece. This is the back of our dress that I'm about to work on. So the only difference between the front and the back is the neckline. Everything I did on the front piece, I'm going to repeat on this back piece. Mark my shoulder line, my bust point, my waist and my hip, and then put all the exact what they call it now, measurements on each of those horizontal lines, and then connect the lines together. So I'm just going to do that real quick, and then we would continue in the tutorial.
Alright friends, so for this back piece, the dimension for the neckline is 5 inches by 1.5 inch, okay? Feel free to tweak it to your preferred dimension, but for me and what I would prefer for my dress, I want it to be 5 inches wide and 1.5 inches deep, okay? The neck width is 5 inches to match the front, okay? And the neck depth is 1.5 inch for the back. Remember that the depth for the front is 7.5 inches, okay? Feel free to make adjustments to your preferred taste. What I'm also doing here is I'm also connecting the neckline to the 1 inch shoulder slide. Alright guys, so after doing all of that, I decided to now start to cut out those places that I marked earlier. Remember, just the neckline and the shoulder slide. Those are the things that we are cutting out for this particular style of bubu. Okay, and while cutting, just be careful. Make sure that you don't eat into your fabric that you are working with. Alright, so now that I'm done doing that, the next thing I'm going to be working on is attaching organza fabric to the edge of my dress. Okay, remember that we're working with Ankara and organza.
Alright guys, so these are the organza fabrics that I'm going to be attaching to the sides of the bubu. So this is the side where I'm attaching the organza. The organza is about 60 inches long, the full length of a of a fabric or of some types of fabric, but this particular organza is by 60. So this is 10 inches wide and 60 inches long. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take each strip of organza, attach it to the side. Let me do an example for you guys. So this is one strip of organza. Organza does not have right or wrong side, so anyhow you place it. So it's going to fall over like this on the sides that I'm placing it on. So this is one hand, fall over like this. I'm going to sew it all the way on half an inch and then flip it over. This is the wrong side though, but yeah, I need to do the right side, but because I've not sewn this fabric yet, but let me just illustrate for you guys so you get the gist. So this is what I'm talking about. I think I'm going to trim off this this Ankara logo. I'll trim it off, but just for explanation purpose, you place the organza like this, yeah, and then sew all the way down. I hope you guys can see. Let me see if I can zoom out. So this is the top of my fabric. I'm placing the organza right here, yeah, and so all the way down, attached to another arm of the dress, sew all the way down until I'm done using all the 4 strips of fabric. So once I do that, I'll be back to continue the tutorial with you guys. Okay guys, so this is the front. Remember, this is a v-neck. So I sewed 2 inches. This is going to be like I hope you guys understand what I mean. So the reason why I did this 2 inches in front here is because I'm adding zip to this my bubu. So in order for the front and the back to match each other, because I already have 2-inch zip allowance on the back, I have to also take account of the 2-inch allowance on the front as well. If you don't want this zip allowance situation, you can take off that 2 inches from the ends of your fabric, from the what they call it now, the edge. But because I just want this to, I just want this for my own fabric, that's why I decided to put the same 2 inches zip allowance that I have at the back. I want it on the front as well. So what I've done now is I've sewn all the way here. You guys might not be able to see it because I used a matching color of thread, because this is a dress that I plan to wear. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up this zip allowance. So I'm going to grab my scissors real quick, open it up, and then I'll fold it over and iron it so that that zip allowance is very flat. I'm still also going to use my weaving machine just to weave the edges, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let me get my scissors real quick, open up the zip allowance, and then we'll continue in the tutorial. Alright guys, so at this point I could decide to just go to my weaving machine and just weave the edges, but because I want this process to move really quick, I'm going to save the weaving of my work till the end of the tutorial. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my iron, press this point very well, make sure that it lays flat. Then I'm going to also cut the front facing for this my design. So I'm going to grab the same matching color of Ankara and then cut the facing, but we'll get to that. Let me quickly go to my ironing board, press down these points in this particular fabric, and then I would cut the facing.
Alright guys, so after ironing, it's time to cut facing, okay, because for this dress I don't want to use bias tape. I would rather have facing with it, and this is how I like to cut my facing. All I did here was I placed the front of my fabric, okay, the front of my dress, I placed it on a folded piece of fabric and just cut out a matching neckline, and along the sides of that neckline I'm going to cut 4 inches. I like my facing to be between 4 and 5 inches, okay, but for this boo I made my facing 4 inches, and I'm just, see where I'm placing my tape rule, just cutting 4 inches all the way till I get to the fold point, and then I'll just cut out that facing. That's how, I don't know if it's wrong or right, okay, but this is what works for me all the time. This is how I learned to cut facing, and that's how I do with any outfit that I'm cutting facing for. I'm also going to repeat this same thing on the back as well. This is how I'm going to cut the back facing. All I'll do is just get a piece of fabric, unfold, place the back neckline on the folded fabric, and then just trim out a matching piece of facing, and voila guys, that's it for the facing. What I'm doing here is just cutting along that 4-inch width of my facing, just cutting along the dotted lines, and that's it for the facing. This facing, I'm going to now use it for the front piece of my dress, and you see how it already looks. All right guys, on to the next. When making outfits with zips, what I like to do is I like to first of all run a loose stitch along the zip allowance just to prevent me from making any mistake. So what I'm doing here is I'm opening up the loose stitch that I did on the back piece of my dress in order to install zip. For installing zip in this video, I didn't film it. If you guys would like a zipping tutorial, please let me know in the comment section.
Alright guys, so for this bit I just want to talk you through. So what I have here is my facing. So before, you remember that I cut out this particular facing, but I now realize that I didn't add the zip allowance to this facing, so this facing is now useless. So I have to cut another one, this time including this zip allowance. Remember, I've installed my zip right here, so this extra 2-inch here, you add it to the facing, and then you pin the facing along the neckline. So what we are going to do now is we are going to go to our sewing machine, then you are going to sew this neckline just the way we typically sew necklines, on 1/2 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, depending on you and your choice. So when you sew this way, you sew up onto this, and remember, you're not sewing this part, leave this part out, you're just sewing this neckline. The next thing you're going to sew is you're going to press your fabric, right, to feel for your zip. Make sure you're just sewing right beside the zip, you're not sewing over the zip, just right in between here. You can touch, I can feel my zip right here. So when you have your own fabric as well, just feel for your zip and then sew just as close to the zip as possible, sew down. So after that, we're now going to turn it inside out, but we won't get ahead of ourselves. We just quickly go ahead, sew our neckline, sew the zip, and then I'll be back to show you guys how to turn it inside out. All right guys, so I've already turned out this side, but this is what it looks like now. So we're just going to cut off this tip of our zip and then flip the neckline inside. You see the way I'm doing, just by this tipping point right here, you see, just turn it inside out this way, and voila, our neckline is done. That's it right there. So you can now zip up. What we are going to do now is I'm going to take this to my ironing board and iron this really well. Then that'll be it for the back.
Alright guys, so what I'm doing here is I'm placing my facing on the front of my fabric, right sides facing each other, and then pinning where the V is. In order to get a perfect V, I have a tutorial. I'm going to link that tutorial on the screen. Feel free to check out that tutorial if you don't know how to sew a perfect V neck.
Alright guys, so I'm back on my work table. I already attached the organza to my fabric. I also went ahead to use my weaving machine to weave both the edge of the organza as well as the joining that I did on the Ankara. Also, remember that we've done the facing for the neckline. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut off stray threads, cut off the straight thread, then put a bit of what they call this now, hemming gum. Yeah, so put hemming gum over here and then press it on just to make this place lie flat. I'm going to do the same thing for my back facing, put some hemming gum underneath, iron it, and then we'll be back to join the front and the back together, and then we can wrap up this tutorial. Alright guys, so I'm back on the table. I already went ahead to press on some hemming gum, so that's why I can't lift off this part. I did the same thing for the back. So I also joined my shoulders as you can see. Don't know if it's clear on the camera. So I joined the shoulder. I also use my weaving machine to weave the entire thing. Also focus on it. Voila. Also reduce the brightness. Okay, so this is what we have here. Everything looking nice and sweet. I did the same thing for this other side. So what we are going to do now is we are going to put my horizontal measurements and then mark the exact points. No sewing allowance will be added. So what I'm going to do first of all is to fold my fabric into two. I have my pattern master, my hip curve. My pattern master is also going to serve as my ruler, but I also have my ruler as well. But I just want to fold the fabric into two.
In this bit of the tutorial, I made a mistake, okay? I was marking my measurements on the wrong side of my fabric. In order to make sewing easy for you, please mark your measurements on the right side of your fabric. This bubu is a butterfly bubu and your sleeve is supposed to fall over your shoulders. So please don't make the same mistake that I made in this tutorial.
Like so. Then from this fold, I'm going to be marking my measurements. From my shoulder line to my bust point is 11 inches, but I'm going to go up by 2 inches, and that's where all my measurements will start from. So that's going to be 9 inches. For these points, please use your own measurements. Like I said at the beginning of this video, these measurements are my measurements, so that's what I'm doing. So I just marked 9 inches right here. I'm going to draw a line, a vertical line. I think I want to use my pattern master for this. Just square out my line like so. All right, so like I said at the beginning, we are working with shoulder to nipple, which is 11, or shoulder to bust point, which is 11. I'm going upwards by 2 inches, so I have 9 inches. So from that point, I'm going to do my shoulder to my waist. My shoulder to my waist is 17 inches. So I'm marking 17 right here. And my shoulder to my hip point is 27 inches. I'm going to mark my 27 right here. So this is where my hip measurements will be placed. And then that's all. Those are all the measurements that we are working with. So on each of these lines, I'm going to square out each line just for precision. So this is my waistline. I'll draw my line right here. And my hip line as well. Alright, so on the bust, my round bust is 40 inches. 40 inches divided by 4 is 10. I'm just going to add half an inch for ease, because I don't want the bubu to be too tight. I could have done 1 inch, but I want the bust point to be very, nicely fitted. Also on my waist point, my waist is 34. Okay, 34 divided by 4 is 8.5. I'm also going to add half an inch ease, so that will be 9 inches. Marking my 9 inch right now. My round hip is 42. 42 divided by 4 is 10.5. So I'm going to mark 11 on the hip point like so. And then from this hip point, we are doing a straight line all the way down. But first of all, let me connect all these my lines together. So from here to here, then for the hip point, like so. And then from here, we're doing a straight line all the way down. I marked 11 here, so I'm going to mark 11 all the way to the end of the fabric. Like I said, I'm going to stop my sewing about 10 inches from the hem. So 10 inches from this ending, I'll stop right there, because I want to be able to walk freely in the dress. If I sew all the way down, my walking will be restrictive. So I'm going to sew up to like 10 or 8 inches from the end of the dress. So all the measurements that I marked on this side of my fabric, I'm going to turn the fabric to the other side, mark those same measurements, and sew straight all the way down. And then it's the time for me to check out what I did, do some fitting, check if the outfit fits properly, and then that will be the end of this tutorial. But first of all, let me go ahead and sew, and then I'll be right back.
Alright friends, so that's it for this tutorial. I went ahead to sew the hem of my dress. Okay, I just rolled it up by half of an inch. I first of all wove the edge, then I rolled it up by half of an inch, and voila guys, this is the end result. I wore this dress to church and it was so comfortable. You guys know that my favorite style is just easy fashion. Any cloth that makes me feel comfortable in it, I love it already. If you enjoyed watching this tutorial, please be sure to hit the like button below. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do well to subscribe, and don't forget to turn on your post notification, which is that bell right beside the subscribe button. Hit that bell so you don't miss any one of my tutorials. Also, please feel free to share this video with your friends and family. Okay, sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you are the kind of person that likes to connect with your favorite YouTubers on other social media platforms, okay, if you like to see other things about them apart from their YouTube tutorials, please do well to also follow me on different social media platforms. Okay, I'm on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Okay, I'm going to leave my handles on the screen. Search for me on there and just do well to follow me if that's what you're interested in. Thank you guys so much again for watching and clicking on this video, and I can't wait to see you in another one. Bye.